The auditorium glows like a promise engineered under bright lights. Stage rigs hang in quiet constellations. A 30-foot screen washes the room in confident blue. A sizzle reel loops on mute, smiling crews, gleaming bays, graphs with patient arrows. Banners above the wings declare safety is our edge in letters that look sharp. Air conditioners hum the same key as the cameras riding the aisles. Rows fill with jackets and logo fleeces, with clipboards and coffee balanced on knees. Badges flash, then settle. Laughter runs the length of a row, thins, and disappears beneath the rehearsal of applause. Somewhere a volunteer straightens a stack of question cards that will not be used. Eli Navarro stands near the back where the wall absorbs light. He carries a manila folder labeled in neat block letters, validations/deferrals/classes. In his other hand a slim black notebook lies open to a page held by a small blue paper star, folded last night by Maya while he checked logs. He touches the star with a thumb as if confirming a bearing. The edge is soft from her careful creases. He looks like another contractor standing out of the camera's path, invisible the way working people often are in rooms that prefer screens. He watches the sizzle reel repeat the minute where near misses are edited into excellence. He watches the timer in the corner count down to the part where belief starts. A hush moves forward row by row. The doors near the stage open in choreography. Nova Hale's entourage enters, chief of staff at her shoulder, notes aligned, steps measured. The screen fades to a white field, then resolves to her title slide in clean type. The room gathers itself. Eli closes his folder and lifts his eyes to the truth he brought. Nova steps into the light as if it were another instrument to tune. "Thank you for the work you do," she says, voice steady, pace exact. Slides advance with a fingertip, 0 incident quarters, industry-leading SLAs, lanes delivered on time and cold. She names the targets without decoration, and the room absorbs them like weather it prefers. "We'll take 10 minutes of questions," she adds. "Questions about our path forward, ideas that strengthen what we are building. Not legacy grievances." Her smile stays warm enough for cameras. Her eyes keep time. A ripple of applause rises, manufactured and neat. Gatekeepers settle near the aisle, microphones, headsets on, tablets up. A handler checks badges as if reading sheet music, weighing who fits the moment and who doesn't. One mic light blinks red, another waits for permission. Eli lifts his hand from the back row, palm high, elbow still. The handler sees the manila folder tucked under his arm, the black notebook with a small blue paper star pinning a page, the contractor badge that says Access, Event. Hesitation is a beat you can count. Optics win by inches. He nods once and waves Eli to the floor mic. Eli walks the side aisle, careful and unhurried, as if carrying a glass of water through noise. He takes his place, sets the folder against his ribs, and rests 2 fingers on the notebook's spine. The mix halo turns green. A camera finds him, frames his shoulders, then drifts back to the stage as if by instinct. On the screen the sizzle reel fades to black. A bumper appears, Q&A, white on blue, a timer in the lower corner starting at 10 o'clock and beginning to fall. The hum in the room thins to a listening frequency. Nova glances once at the clock and then at the arc of hands rising and lowering across the rows. "Back mic," she says, unclipped and even. The first question lands where he is standing. Eli lifts the blue star from the page and smooths its crease once, a small habit that steadies him before he lets the facts walk forward. Eli leans into the mic only enough for sound. "3 seams," he says, voice level. "First, after code pushes, our validation still trusts last quarter's table. Small misses slide through as passes, then reverse a week later as administrative CLIA. On a ledger it looks tidy, on a trend it accumulates pressure. Second, midnight maintenance deferrals cluster between 040 and 120 under the same credential string. The note says monitor at next cycle. Less than 24 hours later, incident flags rise on the same assets. It isn't a story, it's a schedule. Third, insurance class is quietly downgraded before higher-risk departures. Claims hit quickly if an alert flickers. Closures arrive faster than caution would prefer. The premium looks thrifty until a lane freezes. He doesn't name names. He doesn't reach for volume. It's in the logs. He adds. My tickets show opened and then suppressed. If we're wrong on order, lanes freeze 60 to 90 days. Cash follows. Reputation follows. And people who work those lanes pay first. He raises the manila folder just enough to be seen, then sets it against his ribs again. If I'm wrong, show me where the sequence holds. If I'm right, we should fix the order before the deck congratulates it. The back rows have stopped checking phones. A camera lingers on his badge, then returns to the stage as if embarrassed to be caught listening. Eli's hand rests on the blue paper star folded by Maya, thumb finding its edge like a metronome. I don't need credit, he says. I need the numbers to tell the same story twice. The room waits for the part where the show moves on. The timer on the Q&A bumper ticks from 7:08 to 7:07, then 7:06. Air holds the way it does before a storm decides. Nova's smile stays where cameras expect it. When she speaks, the vowels are warm enough, but the consonants carry a new weight, as if her language has tightened a buckle the audience cannot see. She thanks him for bringing perspective to an already rigorous system and prepares the line she uses when a show must keep moving. Around the mics, handlers lean forward a centimeter, rehearsing how to pass the next question. Nova steps back to the podium, her voice smooth as glass. That characterization is not accurate, she says. We do not suppress safety escalations. Our validation sequence is sound and audited quarterly. The microphone catches the precision, it does not catch hesitation. A few heads nod near the front, people who need schedules more than truths. Others freeze, eyes flicking toward the stage where graphs remain perfect while the floor feels less certain. The air thickens by degrees. Eli does not bristle. He keeps his hands at his sides, the blue paper star tucked against the notebook's edge like a private anchor. I can be wrong, he says evenly. But the logs don't know how to lie. He lets the sentence hang without demand, trusting data over optics. The timer on the screen ticks lower, demanding motion from a room that has stopped moving. Handlers glance at the producer in the wings. It is time to return the narrative to victory. The sizzle reel loads in the background, ready to wash over the moment with color and confidence. On the stage left wing, Priya Desai watches the exchange without smiling. She pulls her phone from her pocket, the screen dark until her thumb wakes it. Suppression dashboard, she thinks before typing. Search Navarro. The network is slow here, but the request pushes through before applause could cover the silence. The big screen readies a victory montage, charts rise, photos spin. Priya scans past login times and device IDs. A match surfaces in gray text, small and undeniable. She taps share and looks up at AV, switch queue. Her face gives nothing away, only the work. Nova turns from the podium to the screen, unaware the slide deck has already lost control. The room holds its breath. Truth waits for power. Priya types Navarro into the suppression dashboard and lets the system find its own indictment. A ticket surfaces with a gray pulse, ID 47-11C. Attachment open 1413. Routing suppressed 1545. Elapsed, 92 minutes. Device, KR01. She taps the device tag. The profile resolves to Kelvin Ross, VP Operations. Reason code, verif hold, boilerplate that explains nothing. She scrolls and catches two earlier echoes, opened, then quieted, enough to prove a habit, not a hiccup. Screenshot. She copies the metadata string, timestamps, device ID, IP, and pins it to a note titled Live. She opens compliance chat. Need live console link now, disputes, 90D, maintenance edits with timestamps / by user, validation sequence order, insurance class changes, and ticket trail for 47-11C. Read only. Please add third-party anomaly overlay, thermogrid feed, for corridors and 4 and S2, window ± 48H. Mask PI, show device tags. A reply lands in 5 seconds on it. 90 seconds. She messages AV/IT, switch to compliance console on my queue. Program feed equals input 3. Audio unchanged. Hold the sizzle. The producer looks up from his tablet. She points once to the stage clock and once to the switcher. He nods. Stand by on 3. She texts Nova without preface. Suppression match plus anomaly feed aligns. KR device. I can put it on screen. Across the apron, Nova's phone lights in her hand. The expression in her eyes changes the way a room's temperature changes when someone opens a door to winter. She does not ask a question with her face. She gives a single, slow nod. Compliance drops a link, a live console filtered to a neat set of truths. Priya taps it open. Gray rows snap to order, disputes reversed inside tolerance, a diff showing validation loaded after pricing on last push, maintenance edits clustering at 040 to 120, a column of device tags that hold still on KR01, insurance downgrades before higher risk departures. A small window in the corner blooms with thermogrid anomalies, cold chain dips that map to deferral nights and claim mornings. She toggles masks, drags the suppressed ticket into the top left of the layout, and pins timestamps beside the device tag so the room won't get lost. AV pings, ready on 3. Priya walks to the booth, one hand on the rail, eyes on the stage clock as it ticks down the last minute of Q&A. On my cue, she says again, quiet enough to feel like a promise. The producer lifts a finger to the switcher. The tech leans into his panel. The victory reel waits with its breath held. IT arms the live feed. Compliance overlays the third-party sensor map. The handshake light goes green on input 3. On stage, the sizzle reel frame freezes for half a beat as the program bus prepares to flip from wins to the thing that matters. The screen does not fade, it cuts. One frame of victory dissolves into a wall of gray data, live and breathing. Eli's ticket sits in the upper left corner, timestamped in cold white, opened 1413. Suppress 1545. Device, KR01. The gap of 92 minutes hangs like a held breath. Below it, edit logs cluster in a narrow band between 040 and 120, the user column sticky with the same credential string. A narrow chart shows the validation table loading at 2:15 hours after the pricing push at 2300 hours, a sequence that puts the cart before the horse and calls it order. To the right, a diff blooms in red and green. The validation rules set trusting stale codes while new assets pass through unchecked. At the bottom, a third-party feed from thermogrid paints temperature dips across corridors N4 and S2, each cold chain anomaly aligning with a deferred maintenance window, each claim closing faster than caution would allow. The colors are quiet, grays, reds, greens, but they speak louder than any sizzle reel. The room forgets to breathe. 1,000 people sit in the hush of a stadium that has just been shown its own heartbeat. Phones lower. Coffee cups freeze halfway to lips. The camera operators, trained to follow faces, instead let their lenses drift to the wall of truth, unable to look away. Nova steps forward, her silhouette sharp against the glow. She reads the metadata aloud, voice steady but stripped of its earlier warmth. Open 1413. Suppressed 1545. Device KR01. She lets the numbers hang, each digit a pin in the map of what went wrong. Validation loaded after pricing. Deferrals precede anomalies by less than 24 hours. In the front row, Kelvin Ross sits very still. The color drains from his face in a slow tide, leaving him pale against the dark fabric of his suit. His hands, resting on his knees, twitch once, then grip the fabric as if anchoring himself to a floor that has begun to shift. Eli stands where he was, the blue paper star still marking his page, the manila folder under his arm. He does not smile. He does not move. He simply stands completely still, watching the data speak the truth he carried in silence. Nova turns from the screen to the room. Her shoulders square. The timer on the Q&A bumper has stopped counting down, frozen at 4:22. She takes a breath that the microphones catch, a small sound in the vast quiet. Decision time has arrived, and the room waits for her to finally name it. Nova faces the wall of data and then the faces staring into it. Leave the room, she says to Kelvin. It is not loud, it does not need to be, He stands, every eye await, and walks the aisle no one ever plans to use. The door closes with the ordinary sound of a consequence. On mic, Nova gives the room a spine. External audit is engaged today, independent of operations and finance. Counsel is retained on a separate track. Preserve the chain of custody now. Inboxes, devices, shared drives, edit logs. IT, snapshot KR01 and any linked credentials. Revoke elevated permissions pending review. Suspend maintenance edit rights immediately. Dual approvals only, with 2 human names, reasons in plain language, and timestamps a person can read at a glance. Midnight windows are supervised with checklists. Any change that breathes wrong waits for daylight. Rebuild the validation refresh order before any pricing loads. Lock it in deployment scripts. Test twice. Read only on live data and again in sandbox. And document so it survives turnover. Freeze manual insurance adjustments until controls are rebuilt. Add alert ladders for pre-departure flags that climb operator, supervisor, compliance, then legal, with timers that ring if silence pretends to be resolution. Vendor relations, publish a call tree that routes to people, not mailboxes, with hours attached. Legal, add a 30-day cure to confine freezes to disputed lanes only. And where language can drift, add a bilingual control clause certification, both texts on the same page, 2 signatures, 1 truth. From this minute forward, any risk above threshold routes to compliance, and to my office at the same time. Open channel. No single point suppression. She turns slightly, letting the quiet carry the change. If the slide says one thing and the logs say another, we believe the logs. Applause does not start, work does. Compliance rights hold in clean capitals. IT's keys begin a precise staccato. Ops sketches a ladder on the tablet that will become today's runbook. The cameras keep rolling and catch something rarer than a reel, process acquiring a conscience. Nova breathes once, not for effect, but because oxygen has returned. Thank you for your attention, she says. Now return to your posts. We fixed the order before we celebrate it. Her eyes find Eli near the back, the blue paper star still tucked in his notebook. She gives the smallest nod RO. Producers lower the house music. The screen stays on the console by design. Managers stand, dialing their depots. Legal moves down the aisle collecting names for holds. Vendor relations drafts the call tree on a tablet. The applause never comes. The fix has started, and the room knows its job right now. Backstage the corridor is cooler, the air muffled by curtains and cable runs. The big screen's glow dies at the edge of the wall, the hum is a steadier key. Eli stands with the manila folder under his arm, the blue paper star tucked at the corner of his notebook like a compass. Nova steps off the mark where a producer had planted her and lets the light fall behind her. I dismissed you, she says, voice without microphone, and it sounds like a sentence meant for only 2 people. I let schedule outrank sight. I treated velocity like virtue and called a warning untrue. The logs on the wall corrected me. That correction is mine to carry. I am sorry. She keeps going because time spent on truth should buy work. I need you engaged today on a day rate under NDA. Close the seams you named, move validation where it belongs, lock maintenance behind dual approvals, stop manual insurance edits until controls are rebuilt, and help legal template language that cannot drift. If the audit holds, I will propose a short retainer to harden processes and train teams. Official channels. Clean terms. Your name in the chain only where it has to be. Eli listens the way a craftsman measures wood before a cut. He does not rush to catch an apology, and he does not decorate acceptance. He glances at the corridor clock, more habit than impatience, and lets the offer settle into order. I can hand fixes to ops and compliance by end of day, he says. The documents will speak for themselves. You don't have to be the story, Nova says. Results will be. She pulls a single-page agreement from her folder, initials a margin clause about disclosure, and hands him a pen that weighs more than it looks. He reads, signs, dates. The ink dries without ceremony. The paper returns to her hands. He closes his notebook and sets the folder square. One condition, he says, voice still even. Home by 3:30 for pickup. If we run past that, it becomes tomorrow. No exceptions. Eli keeps his eyes on the page a moment longer, then lifts them. Home by 3:30 for pickup, he says. If we run past that, it becomes tomorrow. No exceptions. Agreed, Nova answers, without bargaining. She writes the line into the engagement in her even-hand boundary. Home by 3:30 p.m. Work beyond that rolls to next business day. She initials the margin so no one mistakes it for courtesy, dates the page, and slides a copy back to him. Official channels. Clean terms. He reads the clause once more, nods, and tucks the copy into his folder. I'll hand fixes to operations and compliance, he says. Runbooks, checklists, and a draft of the vendor addendum. Then I'll disappear. You don't have to be the story, Nova says. Results will be. She caps the pen, breathes the smallest breath that is not for cameras, and turns the apology into logistics. Deliverables. The validation refresh order locked ahead of pricing with 2 tests attached. Maintenance edits behind dual approvals with names, reasons, timestamps, and audit links. Manual insurance adjustments frozen until controls are rebuilt. The alert ladder and call tree live by close. A bilingual control clause certification template with 2 signatures on the same page. Route drafts to PRIA. Publish runbooks to ops before 3. Understood, he says. He palms the blue paper star on his notebook the way some people touch a wedding band, then releases it. I'll start with the sequence, then the edits, then the language. HR appears at the end of the corridor with a small stack of badges and the ease of someone who knows where chairs should go. War room is ready, she says. Seating set for ops, IT, compliance, and legal. Snacks and a clock. They move together through a door painted the color of caution and into a room that prefers lists to speeches. The last of the stage light dies behind them. Work faces forward. The war room stops pretending to be a meeting and becomes a blueprint shop. Tables shift, cords find lanes, a wall turns into a runbook. Eli draws a ladder of boxes no bigger than a palm, numbers them, and hands the order to ops like a key. Validation refresh moves to the front of the line, before any pricing table loads. IT writes the sequence into deployment scripts so a push cannot outrun the rules again. They test on live data behind a read-only gate, then again in the sandbox. Screenshots pinned beside the steps, proof that order now has teeth. Maintenance leaves the dark. Dual approval replaces faith. 2 human names on every change ticket, a reason in words a shift lead can read, and timestamps that stand in daylight. Midnight windows shrink to a supervised hour. A checklist lives on the wall. Any change that breathes wrong waits for morning. KR01 loses its keys, and the system refuses proxy signatures. Audit links open on the first click and display who touched what and when. Insurance pauses until the floor is dry. Manual edits freeze behind a single queue. Any departure underinsured at plan throws a red tile before a dock door rolls. Ops builds an alert ladder that climbs operator, supervisor, compliance, then legal, each step bound to a clock that rings if silence pretends to be resolution. Vendor relations posts a call tree that routes to humans, not mailboxes, with names and hours beside numbers that answer. Contracts stop drifting. Legal and Eli template a bilingual control clause certification that glues meaning to the page. English and partner language sit side by side, bound to the same definition, 2 signatures on the same sheet so no one can claim a mirror means 2 truths. Vendor addenda at a 30-day cure that confines freezes to disputed lane only, with dates both parties can see. The rest of the map keeps moving. Numbers begin to tell a different story. Validation drift drops by half in the first cycle. Incident flags fall back from mornings after midnight work. The risk meter for freezes walks out of red. Dashboards smooth like water settling when the stone has already sunk. People in the depots notice first. The room hears it second in the way radios stop sounding tense. Eli keeps his voice where work lives. If the right person reads the page can work, he says, and it lands like a bolt tightened to torque rather than applause. He writes himself out of the center of the sequence, names owners beside each rung, and closes his notebook when the whiteboard starts copying itself into hands. Confirmations arrive in a quiet rain, test logs saved, access changed, addendum acknowledged, certification template filed. Priya schedules a 5-minute vendor brief. IT posts a green check on the deployment board. Nova smooths her jacket with a motion that belongs to work, not cameras, and walks toward the stage that now has to match the room. Nova steps back into the light without the Rio behind her. The console still fills the screen, gray rose steady as tide. She rests both hands on the podium and lets the room arrive. I dismiss the claim as untrue, she says. The logs proved otherwise. That's on me. No qualifiers. No hinge words. The sentence lands and resets the hour. She names what follows as work, not penance. An external audit is engaged today, independent of operations and finance. Counsel is retained on a separate track. We are preserving the chain of custody across inboxes, devices, and logs. Maintenance edits are suspended until dual approvals are live. 2 human names, plain language reasons, timestamps you can read at a glance. Validation refresh moves before pricing and will be locked in deployment scripts. It will be tested twice and documented so the order survives turnover. Manual insurance adjustments are frozen while controls are rebuilt. Pre-departure alert ladders are in place, with timers that ring if silence pretends to be resolution. Vendor Relations is publishing a call tree that routes to people, not mailboxes. Contracts will carry a bilingual control clause certification, both text on the same page, 2 signatures, 1 truth. Vendor addenda will include a 30-day cure that confines freezes to the disputed lane. From this minute, any risk over threshold routes to compliance, and to my office at the same time. Open channel. No single-point suppression. She does not turn this into a story about redemption. She thanks the man who kept receipts when the room didn't, without naming him for a camera that would rather have a face than a process. Thank you, she says, for insisting the page match the promise. The room stands, not loud, not long, an exhale for accuracy restored. Managers peel off to their calls. Operators text green checks. The console stays up by design. Near the exit, Eli slips through a side door, unnoticed. In the quiet hallway he checks the time. 3:10. He folds the blue paper star into the notebook, and starts the walk that ends where it should. He turns toward home. Outside the school, Maya spots him before he lifts a hand. Paint freckles her sleeve, and her pocket bulges with blue paper stars. She runs the last 5 steps and fits under his arm as if the day had been waiting for the shape of them. Was the screen big? She asks, voice bright. Big enough for the truth, he says. Did they listen? They did. She fishes out 1 star and presses it into his palm. It's for later, she says. He slides it into the seam of his notebook where the first one waits, a small constellation that keeps its own time. They start home, matching pace without deciding to, the kind of rhythm you learn from years of doorways and bus stops and promises kept. He tells her the short version, the one that sits without wobbling. The walls showed the numbers, he says. The room believed what it could see. She thinks about that while they stop for the light, shoes touching the curb like a line they agreed on. Good, she says. Blue keeps lies away. Across town, ether hums in a different key. The open channel lives. Any risk over threshold travels past single hands and lands where it can be answered. Dual approvals hold at midnight. Tickets carry 2 names, reasons, timestamps that read like clocks, not fog. On Nova's desk a small card waits where the first glance lands. If the slide and the logs disagree, believe the logs. The screen shows a console now, not a reel. They turn onto their street. Trees lift their shadows from the pavement. A dog barks once and forgets why. Maya walks a step ahead, then beside him, then takes his hand again. The notebook edge knocks gently against his hip. A blue star peeks from the paper like a point on a map. Home is the name of that point. They arrive on time. The door opens and holds.